Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Ask the Doctors on Whitewater Community Television's WCTV Channel 11, WCTV Channel 21, and streaming on Facebook Live. You're seeing this shot because even though the information came out from the CDC yesterday that if you're vaccinated, which all three people in this studio are and have been beyond that 2-week period where your vaccination is complete and you are immune, as it were, if we can use that term, and I'll probably get corrected here on live television again. One of the things I think they would like you to know is there are still rules in effect. Our programs come out of the WCTV studios, which are on the campus of Indiana University East. They set our guidelines. We all walked into the studio still wearing our masks. We are still socially distanced as we have been, and that won't change until guidance from the campus updates. And that's one of the things we really want to say. While the CDC said some things yesterday that are making people go, yes! You still have to follow the rules of wherever you are. So our guest today on Ask the Doctors, Dr. David Jetmore, Wayne County Health Officer. Sir, good to have you back.
It's good to be back, Eric.
And sitting in, you're not Dr. Who.
I'm not Dr. Who.
Christine Stinson, Executive Director, Wayne County Health Department. Thank you very much for being here.
It's always a pleasure.
Always
Thank
good
you.
to see you.
Yes.
Yesterday's announcement, normally I ask you to kind of wrap up the week, but for a lot of people, the week was yesterday's announcement.
Yeah.
What does that do for you all? Does that make you smile and do the happy dance in the aisles, or does that create a whole nother set of issues and problems for you all?
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
Great minds think alike. That's exactly.
Let's start with the happy dance.
It does make you want to do a cartwheel. I mean, this is something you fantasize about since for a year and a half we've been in this. And, that someday we might have a vaccine and maybe we would be able to begin to resume our lives and not have to wear masks. Well, we're getting close to that day. But the CDC gives recommendations. They do not, the states and the federal government are the ones that enforce behavior during the pandemic, and things are not going to change in Indiana. People will still be asked to wear masks in public buildings and in schools, at vaccination sites, at testing sites. But it affects our private lives in a very positive way. And I said earlier, there's a group of us that meet for, or had up until a year ago, met for a movie at one of the members' houses every Thursday, and we'd watch the movie and discuss it. Well, we haven't done that. Well, all of us have been vaccinated, so now we're doing that again. We're sitting and watching movies without a mask on.
Makes eating your popcorn easier. Darn
right. It's so hard getting it wedged in underneath the mask. You can just pop it right in your mouth without that mask in the way. So, and I'm sure there are other ways that this will positively impact people's lives. And the CDC recommendations will affect state mandates. They'll affect the decisions of governors. But the mandates supersede the CDC recommendations. So.
Now you get to kind of throw cold water on things a little bit.
Well, yeah, he gets to take...
It creates some additional questions, problems.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
And understanding that, like Dr. Jetmore just said, the CDC issues recommendations, and the states can look at those recommendations. Indiana isn't going to look at those recommendations until the end of the month when the current executive order expires. So the state is not looking to lift that anytime before the end of the month. So we'll continue down the path that we are continuing, and understanding the state is going to be looking at our positivity rate, our overall cases per 100,000, and also our immunization rates before they make recommendations to Governor Holcomb on lifting our mandates and recommendations in Indiana. And right now in Indiana, it is still recommended, highly recommended, that everyone continue to wear masks when indoors in a public space. Outdoors at a public space where you are able to distance like we are now. If it's a very, very crowded farmer's market, you should probably put your mask on regardless of your vaccination status.
I'm going to ask the folks in the studio, in the control room. We're getting some help today from a whole host of people. Ryan Harris, Steve Bonwig, I think I saw Brandon Gentry running around. If somebody could pull up the state website, one of the reasons that they're not going to look at this, one, the state mandate has continued, the governor's executive order continues till the end of the month. But this map even looks different than when we pulled it up last week.
Right.
There was a lot more blue on it last week, even than it is this week. And this is kind of the county by county as we see some of that. If you can zoom in on that map just a little bit, if that's possible, so that we can see just a little bit more of the state, and then switch to the positivity rate tab there, if that's possible. And that will show you part of why there is still some concern as to what's going on. That if you looked at that 4 weeks ago, that was very blue.
Oh, very blue.
It didn't make some people happy from a political standpoint, but that map was very blue. Now, a lot of color beginning to creep in there.
Yep, a lot of yellow. And as you can see, there's several counties in orange, which triggers a whole other realm of restrictions when you go into the orange. Yellow kind of is just more warning, hey,
kind of the cautionary
do
tale.
something. And orange is, okay, now you are going to do something. So we don't want to see Wayne County even drift into yellow. And we're bumping a 5% positivity rate, which may trigger us into that yellow status.
And that's interesting because just a few weeks ago you were saying we're at 1.4. Every week it's kind of been creeping up.
Yeah.
We've seen this creep, 1.4, 2.3, whatever.
Very slowly, but there's been a steady progression upward. While we have the map out, I want to point out once again that 4 of the 6 oranges are up along the Michigan border, where Michigan has that B117 variant, and a couple of them are at 2.5. I mean, they're in danger of getting into red. So.
If the control room can make a switch to the positivity rate, which is the tab just to your left, that would help us out. And while they're doing that, I'll remind you that you're watching Ask the Doctors on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're speaking with Christine Stinson, Wayne County Health Department Executive Director, Dr. David Jetmore, Wayne County Health Officer. This is the positivity rate that you all were talking about, and there are some double-digit numbers even on that map, which have to be incredibly concerning.
So we're at a 4.4 right now. And if you're a daily watcher of this, you would have seen that this week we just kind of bounced around. It's very sensitive, that daily positivity rate.
Right.
So you'll watch it jiggle around. I shouldn't say bounce. It just kind of jiggles. It doesn't move, it doesn't fluctuate greatly, but you'll see us at one point we were at a 4.8 this week, and now we're at a 4.4. But then what triggers our weekly, they'll take all 7 days and then give us an average of our positivity rate, and then that's our weekly positivity rate. So that what you're looking at right there is today's positivity rate.
Okay.
So it's a little alarming. Things we can do that affect this are wearing masks. Mask wearing does help our positivity rate. Avoiding very crowded indoor events. So not attending if you know there's going to be, especially if it's an event where you see people are not wearing their mask. And then the third thing is vaccinations. And if we want to move into vaccination right now, we can kind of talk about where we're at, because some pretty exciting things happened this week.
That's the next step. Keep going.
The most important thing that happened was there was approval now to give 12-year-olds and up the vaccine, Pfizer. So now, if you're 12 years old or older, you can get the Pfizer vaccine. And more excitement came when our health department was able to receive Pfizer. So now there are other places other than the Reed site out at the Coleman Center to get the Pfizer vaccine. You can come to the health department. And if that wasn't enough good news, we also can give these vaccinations along with another vaccine. So what does that mean? We have been juggling childhood immunizations and the Covet vaccine and other vaccines this whole time. So, for example, if I just had my shingles vaccine, I could not take the Covet vaccine.
Right.
So you had to kind of schedule things out and move things all around and all of this stuff. And we've all been like, oh, this is going to be really hard when we're going to do back to school shots and all of this stuff to get that Covet vaccine and then juggle when do we give, because we are woefully behind also in just routine vaccines. So now when a child comes in for that routine vaccination, they can be given the COVID vaccine at the same time.
Okay. We are taking your questions, by the way. You can put your questions up on our Facebook page. You can also put your questions on Twitter at WCTV Info, and we will get to those. I am not going to turn this into an In Focus conversation where I ask all the questions. There are just some things we want to try to get out on the first part of this show, and then please send us your questions via Facebook or via Twitter at WCTV Info. Talk about, if you all would, please, while we're talking about vaccinations, the fact that you have moved out of the Elder Bierman building. So talk about that transition.
Yep.
Whoever
You want me
wants
to take that?
Go ahead.
So we have finished the process of demobilizing the mass vaccination sites. We have done all of the bringing in hundreds and hundreds of people a day to get those vaccines, and we've transitioned into smaller vaccine sites and going out into the community and being invited into different sites and taking the mobile unit in there. And the best way to do that was to move the vaccines back to the health department. You'll be able to receive that vaccine either by appointment, by going to the rshot.in.gov and
So
scheduling.
that still works for scheduling
That
appointments.
still works for scheduling appointments. At the health department, you'll still see Wayne County Health Department site, but it's now the location, instead of 601 East Main Street, it's 100 South 5th Street, which is the address of the health department. You'll have a choice of what vaccine you want, because now we have all three. And we're going to allow people to choose which vaccine they want. So if you come in and you would rather have Johnson & Johnson, which is the one shot and you're done, and you're older, you're 18 or older, you'll be able to choose that. Or you can choose Moderna, or you can choose Pfizer. If you're between 12 years old and 18 years old, you'll have to take the Pfizer vaccine, and that's a 2-dose vaccine. But we have all three, and you'll be able to choose. So it's a good feeling to have. We will take walk-ins, and our site is open there at the health department from 9 o'clock until 4 o'clock, and we take our last walk-in at 3:30. That allows us to have time to get any extra doses out to our sites that take our extra doses, like long-term care facilities.
That was a couple of the questions I was going to ask.
Okay.
One, the Pfizer vaccine has always been, it was the first one out, and it was the one that needed the ultra-cold storage.
It does.
Reed Health had that, you all didn't. What now makes you all eligible and able to do Pfizer? What's the change with you all, or with the vaccine?
Right. It still does require, for long-term holding, that ultra-cold storage. But you can store the vaccine for 14 days in regular vaccine freezers. Okay. And so we'll be able to hold our doses for 14 days there, and then an additional 5 days in refrigeration, for a total of 19 days that we can hold that Pfizer vaccine. If we start to see we're not going to be getting it out, and we only have 60 doses.
Okay.
But we've worked with Reed, and I've told the state they don't need to send me any more. I will get my doses from Reed, and that way they have that ultra cold storage. I'm not worried about losing doses because I didn't have the right temperature, and we'll be able to reach out to Reed and take, I need 15 doses, I need 10 doses, whatever small amount, Reed is willing to work with us and give us what we need. So that's really, really much more convenient than trying to work through the state where you may have to take 100 vaccine doses at a time. And we may or may not be able to get 100 doses out depending on, the willingness of our community to take vaccines.
You might find that more people just want the one shot,
Right.
and you're giving out more Johnson & Johnson than you are the other.
Right.
Last question before we kind of turn things over. As you all were getting into the last couple of weeks at Elder Bierman, you had changed your hours. It at one point was 5 or 6 days a week you were down there doing that. You ended up at 3 days, I want to say, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Is that still the case for vaccine, or since it's back in your office, are you all doing this on a 5-day-a-week basis? What's with the vaccine?
Right. So we are staying at Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for the vaccine. Now, we'll be giving vaccines still 5 to 6 days a week, but we'll be out in the community doing those. So at the health department, it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 9 to 4.
Okay. And we do have a slide that we can bring up while you're giving this.
Yeah, and then Mondays and Fridays, for example, today we're at a manufacturer giving vaccines. So we are giving vaccines, we just have very, very specified populations that we're giving them to on the days that we're not giving them right there at the health department. Saturdays, we've started booking with the school districts, and our hope is to have a clinic at every school district, at least one in every school district, that if coming to Richmond is an issue for a school-age child, we're going to be at your district. Wherever the district thinks is the best building to have it at, we're going to be there. And we're working with the schools right now to get volunteers with their PTA or however they want to get volunteers, because our staff is very limited. We are a staff of very, very few. We have burnt through our volunteers. They are burnt out. So now we're turning to the schools and saying, we're going to come here, but I know that there are nurses and doctors and medical assistants and EMTs that have kids at your school. Ask them if they would be willing to give the shots to the students in your school district. So that's where we're at right now. I believe those are going to be on Saturdays. Probably won't be able to get those scheduled before the end of the school year. And then we're also going to be at the fair. So the health department will be at the fair giving vaccines out. And again, we'll have all 3 of the vaccines, and we'll be able to do anyone that's 12 or older.
Okay. You're watching Ask the Doctors on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11, WCTV Channel 21, streaming on Facebook Live. We are taking your questions on our Facebook page as well as on Twitter at WCTV Info. Our guests, Christine Stinson, Executive Director of the Wayne County Health Department, and Dr. David Jetmore, Wayne County Health Officer. He's sitting there over in the corner very quietly, waiting to answer your questions.
Doing.
No, I learn so much when I listen to Christine talk.
So let's get a question in from someone other than me. I'm sure that'll be a nice change. What's the difference between the COVID vaccines having emergency authorization versus full approval from the FDA, and does having full approval change anything, Doctor?
Well, yes, there is a difference. The full approval means the vaccine's been completely vetted and marched through every committee that the FDA can come up with. Emergency approval is there's an emergency, and this pandemic was deemed to have been an emergency, and so therefore the FDA released that. The one ramification I can think of by going from emergency use to full approval is I think it might be employers might be more likely to make their workers get the vaccine. You might be reticent to have somebody take a vaccine that's under emergency approval use only. But as I've said before, there's good precedent for this. I'm required to take a flu vaccine every year by Reed, who is an employer of mine. So that may be the chief ramification. The medicine hasn't changed. It's the same vaccine, whether it's under emergency use or full approval.
Pfizer has applied for full approval.
I think Pfizer has been granted full approval. Is that not true? You don't think they've just applied?
That's why I turned to you all. I think they've applied.
Right.
I haven't heard that it was full. But Moderna came out around the same. I mean, the release date between Pfizer and Moderna was not that different. Are you anticipating that, particularly because we haven't heard of any major problems with Moderna, that they would also apply for full authorization sometime here in the next couple of months? And what's that normal, what would be that time frame based on the number of shots that are given? Would you expect by the end of the summer that the FDA would go, yeah, fine, we're good?
No, I'm not an expert on the various time frames that the FDA requires for the vetting of these different drugs. But I would guess that by the end of the summer, good grief, you talk about a clinical trial, 100 million, 200 million people. That's a pretty good testing of a vaccine.
Probably the biggest trial there's ever been, huh?
Yeah.
Could be. Really could be. I know Moderna is focusing on getting approval for younger people too, and so is Pfizer. I think Pfizer's trials are down to 2 months.
Really?
Yeah.
Now I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
2 months?
2 months, yeah. So, and I know that, I'm not sure about Moderna. I don't know how young that they have, but they can't be far apart from that. I think all 3 vaccines are a very good and safe vaccine to have. And I like Moderna for its easier storage. So my hopes is that Moderna will also be able to get approval for younger places, because having that routine vaccine refrigeration temperature then allows for doctors' offices to more readily be able to say, yeah, I'll be a vaccine provider for Moderna. And, then we get more into point of use care and stuff like that. And I think that a lot of people, especially as we get younger and younger and younger in that, are turning towards their doctors. That's who they trust, and they want to see their doctor, talk to the doctor, and get the shot from the doctor. So the more that we can get these vaccines into doctors' offices, especially pediatrics, I think the better we're going to be, and faster we're going to reach that herd immunity, or that immunity level that allows us to fully return back to life pre-pandemic. But when you look at Wayne County's percent of vaccinated people, you saw that number drop this week too. We were sitting right at 40%, and when you look at it today, we're down to 37%, and you think, well, how did that happen?
I was going to say, how do you go down from where you were?
Yeah.
It's not like you can pull the shot out of somebody's arm.
Well, or can they? No, they added 12-year-olds into that population.
Okay.
So it did look like we've dropped in our positive, or our percent vaccinated. So when we were looking at 16 and older and we were only at 40%, we need to, continue to push and get the vaccines out. I talk about, we got that low-hanging fruit. The people that were willing and wanting to get that vaccine, they all came in and got their shots. And now we have people that have transportation issues. We have language barriers. We have, different issues of why they haven't been vaccinated. And so we have some hurdles now that we have to get over to push us past, 70 to 80%. So you can see we got the boulder halfway up, and that was the easy part. Now we all need to come together and get the rest of our community vaccinated.
Talked about today, the health department is at a local manufacturer, and that's not the first time that you all have done that. You all have been out. You talked about being out at the fair. What does it take for a group of people to reach out and say, listen, we've got 10 people, 12 people, whatever that number is. What is the number that you all want to hear from before you'll go, okay, we're going to show up at that place and vaccinate people? Are you just going for 5? Are you going for 10? Does it need to be fit? What's that trigger if a church called and said, the pastor said, I'm putting a chain around the door after my sermon is done. I got you 15 folks here. What's the deal?
Yeah, it's not really a one size fits all, kind of a thing. If you want the health department to come to you, for example, let's say there is a group home that doesn't have a transportation van, and they have 4 residents there that require wheelchairs and all of this stuff that requires them to move. Well, yeah, we'll send staff out there to give those vaccines. We go to homes. We do the homebound population. So it's not a threshold number. Okay. Kind of with manufacturing, though, we are asking that at least 25, that they have, at least 25 people willing to take the shot for us to fire up the mobile unit and get out there and do those vaccines. We encourage when we go to manufacturers for them to allow family members or whoever to also come and get vaccinated while we're there giving vaccines to the employees. But we're working with churches to bring it in there. We would never encourage the pastor to lock the doors and keep the people in. But, we are going to an event where they're going to provide some music. There's going to be some food provided there for the group to have picnics while we're there to give the vaccine at a Latino fest or a Latino event. So we're working to get out there and overcome these barriers. But we also ask, like some of these groups, I think people want to see their people giving the shots, kind of like with the schools, having parents giving the shots to their children and the students. When we have a church, they might not want to see the health department there giving the shot. Maybe they trust their pastor telling them why it's important to get the shot. So it doesn't have to come out of my mouth or my clinical director's mouth or Dr. Jetmore's mouth. Listen to who you trust, talk about the safety, the efficacy, and all of this stuff, and then let the person that you just sat next to at church, who's a nurse, give you the shot. And we'll just be there kind of as an advisory and a steward of the vaccine.
You're watching Ask the Doctors on Whitewater Community Television, WGTV Channel 11. Dr. David Jetmore here with us. Christine Stinson, Executive Director, Wayne County Health Department. We are taking your questions on Facebook as well as on Twitter at WCTV Info. Let's see if we've got another question up. Are COVID-19 tests only accurate if you have symptoms?
Mm-mm.
No, it's not dependent on symptoms to have a positivity. The PCR test is going to measure the virus in your body, and that's how we know that they're asymptomatic carriers, because testing groups of people, we've seen people that have had no symptoms, and yet they've had a positive COVID-19 test.
How much testing is still going on? I know we spend a lot of time talking about getting people vaccinated. We haven't spent quite as much time talking about testing. Obviously, there is still COVID within the community because the positivity rate is going up. Talk a little bit about testing, when that actually takes place and how that's taking place now. Everybody's been used to, for the last number of months, large sites go in, get tested. Now let's talk about what the logistics of that are as it currently stands.
There are a lot of places that you can get testing now. The LHI site and the health department sites are just two of those sites, but there are private places that you can go. I believe CVS is also still doing testing. So the health department, Dr. Jetmore and I grappled really long about, because this is all grant-based for us to be able to provide those services, and it's a lot of work, to be honest. There's a lot of work that goes into that, and the testing is down. But so are the number of places that people can choose to go to are up. So do we really need to be that? Do we need to be a testing site and a vaccination site and a childhood immunization site and a birth certificate site and a death certificate site and, all of this and I was like, no, we don't need that. Let's give it back. Our testing numbers are low. There are days that we're only doing, 11 people. There's days that we still do 30. But let's let it go, because there are other places to do that. And then we had another conversation.
I think did I bring up something here?
We had another conversation where it was brought to my attention, it was brought to my attention that maybe that's not the best thing that we should do. That's something that when we look at right now, our testing numbers are low, but what is it going to look like in the fall? Neither one of us know that.
Sure.
We don't know. So we should keep that, we're keeping the grant until the end of the year, and then we'll make another decision on that. So our testing, that's a long way of saying, yes, we continue to test. And
Okay.
our testing site is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
And that is also at your office?
At our office. Now, that one, we have parking spaces designated. And when you pull in, there's a sign that says COVID testing parking only. When you arrive, call this number. You'll call that number. They'll know that you're here. They'll come out. They'll test you, and then you'll be gone. You'll never get out of your car for COVID testing.
Oh, okay. But that's your office.
Mm-hmm.
They pull in,
Yep.
call a number that's there on the thing, and somebody comes out and does it. Do
Yep.
they need an appointment for that?
They do need an appointment for that. They do. Because, again, that's just a way for us to manage staff. And, if the numbers ever arise to where we don't have enough appointments for people to sign into, we may see where we go back to more staff and availability for walk-ins. But right now, we just have to manage staff. So we do that through appointments.
Okay. Good information. Thank you. You're watching Ask the Doctors on WGTV Channel 11, WCTV Channel 21, streaming on Facebook. We are taking your questions, even though I seem to be hogging things, on our Facebook page as well as at WCTV Info. Let's see if we've got one or two more questions. The other thing I want to do, we started the show talking about, the happy dance with the CDC guidelines. I do want to kind of go back and have you all take a look at maybe what the CDC has said and remind people, again, what is actually real for us, because there is still a difference. So let's get another question. How soon after exposure do COVID symptoms typically appear?
Usually on about 4th to 6th day after exposure. But it varies. Cases have been reported where symptoms don't appear till maybe the 10th, 11th, or 12th day. But
really, that late?
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that late. I thought it was normally a pretty 7 to 10 day type of thing.
That's why you quarantine for 14 days, because there is now, between 80% will present before day 8, but there's still a percent that will present all the way up to day 14. So that's why that magic number 14, and that's also why you can test out and return to school if you test negative on day 8. because you're going to catch 80% of those.
Okay. We're going to do one more, and then we're going to kind of go back and almost restart this program because there's a lot of
Yeah,
information
there is.
over the last couple of days that we want to make sure that people have a chance to get. So let's get one more question in. How soon and how long could you feel side effects? Oh, okay. How soon and how long could you feel side effects of the COVID vaccines?
Well, those side effects usually occur within 24 hours and probably 90-some% within the first 48 hours. And typically the symptoms are a headache. Everybody has some soreness at the injection site, maybe a feeling of malaise or tiredness. There are reports of people having had more severe symptoms, but the vast majority of patients have no symptoms or very mild symptoms that abate within 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're watching Ask the Doctors on WGTV Channel 11, CTV Channel 21, streaming on Facebook Live. I've told you that a few times. We are still taking your questions. Our guest, as always, Dr. David Jetmore, Wayne County Health Officer, sitting in for Dr. Huth this week. Christine Stinson, Executive Director, Wayne County Health Department. We started this by talking about the CDC released some guidelines, really that more than anything else affects those people who have been completely vaccinated. That's 2 doses of Pfizer, 2 doses of Moderna, 2 weeks after the second shot, or the 1 dose of J&J, and it's still a 2-week wait on that?
2 week out.
Okay, still a 2-week wait. The guidelines that they released allows, in theory, for the removal of your mask in a lot of different places. And I know Steve is in my ear today, and he's got some slides for what the CDC has recommended for people indoors, and then we'll kind of talk about what still is in effect in the state of Indiana, because those are still 2 different things. So these are indoor. If you're vaccinated, supposedly what the CDC can say, you can visit your barber, go to an uncrowded indoor shopping center or museum, attend small indoor gatherings with multiple people from your household, go to an indoor movie theater, attend full capacity worship service, sing at an indoor chorus, eat at an indoor restaurant or bar, participate in indoor high activity classes. If you're vaccinated, if you're fully vaccinated, they're saying that you can do all of that without a mask.
Right.
Obviously, if you're unvaccinated, the conversation is still, you just need to wear your mask.
Mask, socially distance. This basically affects vaccinated people who do things together. You're going to have a lot more freedom. But as Christine said earlier, the mandates of the state are for masking in various places, and that will continue in place at least until the end of the month.
That was from the last executive order that Governor Holcomb put out. And even though the CDC has released these guidelines, they are not going to go back and look at those until that runs out, which is actually the 31st.
Yeah, not too much longer.
Couple of weeks.
So these infographics that the CDC has out there are a good thing for us to look at and say, this is what is to come in Indiana, especially if we get vaccinated, because these releases to be able to, go into public spaces, especially indoor without a mask, are for vaccinated people. So we need to look at that and understand, there's only 40% of Wayne County residents that, were 16 and older that have been vaccinated. So we have appointments available every day. Walk-ins are available, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
I was going to say, hold on, wait a minute, you just changed something again.
So come and get your vaccine and, participate in the great unmasking of America where we can return to normal. And for school-age kids, it's important to realize the freedoms that come with vaccination of school-age children. So those 12 to 18 that are in school, if they're vaccinated, if they're exposed, they don't quarantine. They get a return back to school in the fall normal, where we're not having to, isolate whole entire classrooms because one person in a classroom has COVID-19. And so now this whole entire classroom has to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. Very disruptive. I heard from a lot of parents how disruptive this was, how it led to depression because they were put under quarantine 2 times, in the past 6 months. And I get that. I've raised kids. I know how social beasts they are. So vaccinate them so they don't get put into quarantine when, they're exposed. Entire teams were having to be benched because one person on the team had COVID-19.
Affected a lot of sporting events.
A lot of sporting events, So, we'll be able to return to a more semblance of normalcy if we're vaccinated, especially if we all get vaccinated, then we don't have to lose out on sporting events and proms and all of these things that have been lost, and I understand that. I get it. I've lost a lot in the past year, so for all the people that have called me up and wanted to scream at me and send me nasty emails, I too have lost a lot. Personally,
Sure.
I lost a mother and a mother-in-law during this, and so my visitations and my end of life with parents were affected. So I get it. It affects all of us. So let's get vaccinated to where we can return back to the America that we know and love, and vaccination is the best way that we can do this.
The president has continued to point toward the 4th of July. He did that very early on after his inauguration. He's continued to do that. Are you hoping, believing that those numbers here in Wayne County will kind of hit that point where we need to be? And for you all, because our local government officials have been listening to the health department and the health board and your recommendations. What are you all needing to see here over the next year? Because it sounds like 4th of July is a long ways away. We're midway through May.
Yeah.
We're not that far away. Positivity, as we showed, continues to slowly tick up. What do you all want to say, need to say, want to see happen that can make this work? We're going to be outside more, which, masked or unmasked, should in theory be a good thing.
That is a good thing. I mean, yeah, outside is the safest way to gather with people, especially if it's an outdoor event that there's room to not be all up on each other. Will we be? I don't know. I wish that I had, a magic ball that I could look at and see how things progress. This has been unprecedented, meaning I don't know how it's going to go. We could come into a natural law through the summer, and we may hit that 4th wave that everyone is expecting come November if we don't reach, a certain percent of vaccinations. So I think that the best thing that we can do is, they named the website Our Shot for a reason. It's our shot. It's our time. It's our shot to take over this pandemic. And the best way to do that is to vaccinate. And so, we have 6 weeks, 7 weeks until the 4th of July. That's enough time to get both doses in and attend 4th of July celebrations safely.
I think we're going to have to accelerate. At the present rate, our vaccination rates are so low that we're stalled out almost. I'm hopeful that as more people get vaccinated and people see the benefits of being vaccinated, not just of not having COVID, but of not having to quarantine, whole teams getting vaccinated so they can play all their games, that there'll be some peer pressure. I think there are groups of people, just like I mentioned in my movie club. I mean, in order to continue to be part of that group, you have to get vaccinated. And one of your benefits, besides not getting COVID, is you get to come to the movie club. But I think there are many, many clubs or groups like that throughout Wayne County, and for that matter, the United States, where there may be some peer pressure, good peer pressure brought to bear to get people, whatever their reasons for not having been vaccinated earlier, to get vaccinated.
I think there's a lot of people that it's just not a priority yet to get that. It's not that they're for it or against it. There's just it just hasn't hit my radar yet. And so, maybe the 4th of July celebrations is a reason, to get that. Maybe us being at the fair is going to be, a hurdle that someone thought, oh, well, look, I don't have to go, downtown. I'm here at the fair all week. I can go over there and get my vaccine. So, we're hoping to kind of overcome some of those hurdles, and ambivalence may be, one of those hurdles that we can overcome.
Do you have another question I want to try to get to? So let's do that. We've got about 10 minutes or so left in the show. I have been given the J&J vaccine, but I'm concerned about it not being as effective as the Moderna or Pfizer vaccines. Is it safe to get another brand vaccine? That's an interesting question. We were talking earlier about 8 members of I mentioned before we went on the air, the 8 members of the Yankees. Players, not the one player, some coaches, some staff that have breakthrough, I think is what they call it. They've all been vaccinated. They all got J&J, but 8 of them actually have ended up testing positive for COVID even after that. We've been hearing from both Pfizer and Moderna CEOs that at some point in the future, nobody knows exactly when, boosters might be needed. J&J has been a one shot, and their efficacy rate was 75%?
76
okay.
is what's been reported. First of all, J&J is an excellent vaccine. You have a the FDA would have accepted a vaccine that had efficacy of 50% when we started. So 76%, that's a pretty darn good vaccine. Moderna and Pfizer have an efficacy of about 95%, which is virtually unheard of. But, that's like hitting one out of the park where the base is loaded. But to the person that got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, one of the things you should consider is this. Even the people who have a breakthrough infection, those people have a very mild infection. They're not ending up in the hospital. They're not ending up in the intensive care unit. They're not ending up on a respirator. So those people, even though they got the COVID infection, they still had a great deal of protection from the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. If you were, I know there's 2 schools of thought on mixing these vaccines. I think in Europe, particularly in England, they have given one vaccine and then followed it up with another. Mm-hmm. But I would tell the questioner, be happy that you've had a good vaccine. The chance of getting COVID is very, very unlikely. And if you do get COVID, it will probably be a mild case or an asymptomatic case.
The vaccines are not 100%.
No.
Right.
There is still a chance that you would get it.
Yes.
But like you said, there's something that we were looking for with the vaccines. That was to cut down on the amount of deaths that were being seen.
Correct.
And the amount of hospitalizations, very sick people.
Right.
That does seem to be the case at this point, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Before we bail out of here, and we've probably got about 8 minutes left, I know we spent a lot of time COVID vaccine, but the health department, you have talked about some of the things that you all have done. Talk about your staff and talk about some of the things that you all are looking to get done over the next few months, because there is more in your world
Yeah.
than just this. And back to school, kindergarten roundup, and getting people their vaccinations, their regular vaccinations are part of that. Many months ago, a year ago, there was conversation that the numbers of people getting their vaccines, getting their shots, particularly kids, was low. You're saying that is still the case?
That is still the case. Anytime you kind of lose that momentum to do things, you know, we've slipped a little. Not a whole bunch, you know, but we are working hard to make sure that people know that they can come to the health department regardless of insurance. You know, we take insurance, we take people with no insurance, we take people that have Who's Your Health plan. So we will get you in, we can get your vaccines, you can go to your doctor. Many doctors have their own vaccine for children supply as well. So there are a lot of options. You don't have to come to the health department, but if the health department is convenient and you want to come there, we're more than happy to have you as a client to come through there. We most of the time, you know, require you to have an appointment to do that, and that's just because with the vaccine for children, you keep a very low inventory of your vaccines because you don't want those to go bad. So we schedule and make sure that we have varicella or whatever it is, the vaccine that child is going to need for your appointment. And if we just allowed walk-ins, we may or may not have that, and that leads to frustration, and we want to kind of tamp down that. So the Vaccine for Children program, we do have adult vaccination programs too, where, you know, we offer shingles, we also offer Tdap and those kind of vaccines for adults that need those. We have our harm reduction program, and the 26th, we're getting ready to come back to the commissioners for a renewal for probably our most controversial program at the health department, which is the syringe servicing program. That's up for renewal with the commissioners, and we hope to have all the answers for them that they may need to see, and most importantly, to see that our hepatitis C cases are coming down and that's a direct result of having that servicing program there. Our food division is out and about this year more than last year because we didn't have a lot of food trucks and festivals going on last year.
Food trucks are out.
Food trucks are out. I saw Food Truck Wednesday. I didn't realize that was a thing here.
Food Truck Wednesday in Elstro Plaza.
Yeah.
And now this year they're doing Food Truck Friday at the Golay Center in Cambridge City.
I love food truck food.
I do too. I really do. I do. We'll have to go inspect the Golay Center next Friday or something.
Well, naturally, part of our inspection would be to eat some of that food and make sure we weren't rendered ill,
Yeah.
I would think.
Not really, but so, you know, we're really busy, excited to kind of get back into normalcy. You know, this pandemic was not fun for health departments. You know, we rolled up our sleeves and we did this, but this was a very stressful year. You know, now it's coming over a year that we've been under tremendous stress. It's good to get back to kind of day-to-day operations and inspecting restaurants. Swimming pools are opening up again this year. Can you believe that?
Yes.
That's exciting. I saw that the city pool has water in it.
It does.
I know.
I recorded the park board meeting yesterday. The new slide is up and it's ready to go.
I'm giddy. I'm giddy with excitement. I don't go to public swimming pools, but I love inspecting them. You know, I really, really do. It's a lot of fun to be out there because it's such a fun place to be. Everybody's happy, you know, except for the kid that was running and fell down and skinned his knee. He's not happy, but everybody else is just having a really fun time when you go do a swimming pool inspection. So all of these things are a sense of normalcy for our department, and it's good to get back to those things that we had to put on the back burner because there were no festivals, there were no swimming pools open last year, and all of that stuff. So we're excited about this summer. We really are.
You've said you'll be at the fair, and there's going to be a fair this year.
There's going to be a fair this year.
So
I
that's
love
gonna
a
be
fair.
good. We've got a little less than 3 minutes before I let you go. You did some renovation on your building. You moved into the building, and then you decided to tear it apart and do some renovation.
Yeah.
Did it come out the way you wanted?
It did. It's beautiful. It really, really is. It's very functional. It's very airy and light. You know, we were able to bring in more light and the place used to be a bar, so it was kind of, dark and seedy for a reason. But now we got glass doors, and so it's very light and airy and very functional, very functional. Very happy with how it came out, and a lot of thanks to the commissioners for that building.
Cool. Christine Stinson, Executive Director, Wayne County Health Department. Thank you very much. Good to see a smile on your face about something.
Yeah,
I haven't had a
you.
lot to smile about since. Dr. David Jetmore, Wayne County Health Officer. Thank you, sir. Good for being here. We talked about schools. Next week, George Philhauer, Superintendent of Western Wayne Schools, will be a guest on the first 20 minutes or so of the show. And then in a couple of weeks, we've talked about kids getting vaccinated. Dr. William Black from Pediatrics and Internal Medicine at Reed Health will be our guest in a couple of weeks. So we'll be getting back to doing some of that, also bringing in some other people, some other voices, and some other conversation, hopefully outside of just COVID and vaccine. But got to remind you, COVID-19 vaccine available for 12 and older at the Wayne County Health Department. You can do that. They are offering Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer. That's Tuesday through Thursday from 9 to 5. Appointments can still be made at ourshot.in.gov. Want to invite you to get out and enjoy what is going to be a nice weekend. Richmond Farmers Market taking place every Saturday, 8 to noon in Jack Elstro Plaza. It is ended just before the show started, but mark your calendar. Food Truck Fridays every Friday until August 11 to 2 at the Golay Community Center. Also, don't forget that tomorrow evening, Centerville Loves Our Veterans, the Armed Forces Day Parade in reverse is going to be taking place from 6 to 7 on Crown Creek Boulevard. And once again, we were mentioning food trucks, so Food Truck Wednesday takes place from 11 to 2 in Jack Elstro Plaza. Thank you very much for watching this week's Ask the Doctors on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. Thanks again to our guests for being here. Get out and enjoy what should be, at least for a while, a pretty nice weekend. As always, I wish you well. Be safe, be well. See you next week.